The sky is falling. Have you heard the news? Hey, 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 have you heard the news? The sky is falling. The appraisal profession's over. Just get out of business now. FHFA just dropped a bomb. More waivers are coming. Fannie Mae's, Freddie's all over them. We don't need appraisers anymore, right? God, I hope that's not right. I hear that a lot. And if you're a practitioner, you've probably been hearing that a lot. Is it true? I don't know. One thing I have found as I get a little older, for most people, things are not as bad as they seem. And sometimes holds true that sometimes things are not as good as they seem. I hope that's not true for you. I hope everything's great with you. But I've got a couple of guys right on the other side of the screen here, and we're going to talk about this because I know there's a lot of concern and frustration from the appraisal community when we hear about, hey, we're going to make loans without the use of an appraiser. So we're going to have that conversation in just a minute, along with some other hot topics in the profession. You're not going to want to miss it. Come on back. Hi, this is Bryan Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you as always by the great folks over at Appraiser eLearning. You need some education? Check us out at AppraiserElearning.com. You'll be glad you did. Hey, we've got a lot of new courses coming around the bend. Gosh, it seems like every month we've got 2 or 3 new course offerings. We've got virtual offerings. We have actually some live road shows out there available if you want to come see us live. And of course, we've got the on-demand. If you want to do the self-paced, you certainly can do that as well. We're in 3 conferences, Val Expo, the Appraisal Summit, as well as the AXE Conference. And that's next up on the agenda. If you'd like to see the Appraiser eLearning team live, we partner up with the National Association of Appraisers, and we're coming to San Antonio, Texas in April of 2025. So jump over to Appraiser eLearning, check out the events tab, and you'll find out all about it. I'd like to continue to thank my sponsor. Thank you, thank you, thank you. LIA Administrators and Insurance Services for all you do, for all your support of the Appraisal Update Podcast. And now, without any further delay, I'd like to bring in a couple of really special guys and my guests, and I really am happy that they're here with me today, Mr. Jeff Morley and Mark Verrett. Thanks, guys, for being here. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Great to be here, Bryan.
Absolutely.
So, before we solve all the appraisal world problems here today in the next 30 minutes, Mark, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then Jeff, you follow right behind.
Wonderful. Well, really glad to be here, Bryan. I've enjoyed the podcast for a long time. You're a pro at this. I'm looking to learn. So thanks for having us. Second generation appraiser, been a field appraiser for 2.5 decades now. Launched Acurity Consolidated, I don't know, roughly 5 years ago. I'm the CEO of Acurity and really an appraisal process guy. And my dad was really involved, Ken Verrett, a long time ago, helping appraisers out there through a lot of different unusual ways. And I see myself, at least, as kind of picking up that torch and trying to help appraisers serve clients in a better way. So we spend a lot of our time doing that. And Jeff and I have recently got into the podcast world and launched one. I think we're 18 episodes in or so, and called Market Moves with Mark and Jeff. And so industry volunteership, I think, would be the only other thing to add.
Very cool. Mr. Jeff Morley.
Great to be with you, Bryan. Really appreciate it. Like Mark, second generation appraiser here. Came up with a lot of commercial and residential experience and background in appraising. Love the profession. I mean, it's kind of in my blood and what I know and do. I'm just finishing my second term on our state appraiser board. They're working on getting me replaced at this point, but I'm still on there for a minute. Been a really good experience. It's been great to contribute and serve and give back. It's been great to understand how things work administratively at that level. Been a lot of fun working with Accurity, I'm currently the chief knowledge officer there. I've been involved with doing a lot of training, onboarding, helping prepare new appraisers, helping existing appraisers that come on to get up and successful. Mark and I starting this podcast that Mark had referenced are having a good time with it. We're certainly new and learning as we go, far from professional status I think that we would like to be. But I think like you and John Dingman started a long time ago, Bryan, just having conversations and said, hey, maybe we can put this in a more public forum. You guys moved that over to Clubhouse, and I know I've had some people that were able to join the conversation. We've been trying to and hoping to achieve something similar with pulling this podcast together and just kind of sharing thoughts, based on what we're observing in the market out there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And congratulations on launching that, by the way. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit and let my listeners know how they can get access to those episodes. I think they're going to find them very, very interesting. So we'll get to that in just a minute. But listen, we got a lot of hot topics to talk about, right? And probably one of the hottest topics over the last couple of days was this announcement. Okay, and so if you're watching right now, you can see something on the screen. If you're a listener, please don't pull over or have a wreck. But you can watch these broadcasts on our YouTube channel. So go to YouTube, search Appraiser eLearning, and then you can find the Appraisal Update podcast on YouTube. And then, you can see me, you can see what our guest looks like, and then you could see what I have on the screen right now. But for those of you listening, what I have on the screen is a Housing Wire release, and it says FHFA to allow alternative appraisal methods on purchases up to 97% LTV. Maximum LTV will be 90% for appraisal waivers and 97% for inspection-based appraisal waivers. And I've highlighted that down in the text itself. The maximum LTV will increase from 80, so it was 80%. It's going to increase from 80% to 90% for appraisal waivers, and then from 80% to 97%. That's significant. They're both significant for inspection-based appraisal waivers consistent with standard guide eligibility guidelines. Okay, guys, so we were at 80% to 90, and now from 80% to 97% for inspection-based appraisal waivers. So I want to get your feelings on that. Before we do, somebody give me clarity on what is the difference between an appraisal waiver and an inspection-based appraisal waiver. Either one of you, I don't care.
You bet. Well, so interesting to see the difference in the LTV amounts there, Bryan. So the appraisal waiver, like you laid out, is just a waiver without any sort of verification of the condition of the property. When they talk about the higher LTV with an inspection-based waiver, it means that they want somebody putting eyes on the property, collecting information about what kind of condition it's in, and then they use their evaluation models to do the rest, but there's no appraisal itself that's done there.
And while appraisers can also technically be inspectors, I think we're going to find a lot of these transactions are going to take place without any appraiser's involvement whatsoever. Is that fair to say, Mark?
I think it is. And it seems like I think the waivers process started in 2016 or 2017. So it's been here for a little while now, kind of ebbs and flows with percentage of loans that qualify and usability one way or another. But I think appraisers are certainly feeling in the release. I think FHFA was bragging that some $4 billion of appraisal fees have been saved. I think I read that right. It's an enormous number. Wow. That's over a period of what, 8 years, 7 years. So it's a long period of time, but this certainly increases the possibility of their use.
So, you mentioned something interesting in billions of dollars of appraisal fees saved, but at what risk? I mean, that's the question I have, Jeff, is that this is probably the biggest asset that the typical consumer will ever have in their entire life. And isn't that scary that they're going to get into this property without that third party objective opinion, right? That what USPAP is intended for is to protect the public. What's the potential fallout? I mean, we don't know the fallout, but what is the potential fallout for something like this?
Yeah, it's a good question, Bryan. And the reality is there are a couple of different roles and functions that the appraisal can play in the process. Those that are buying the mortgages, the Fannie Mae's, the Freddie Macs of the world, we refer to them as GSEs or government sponsored enterprises. They're making this policy decision in their effort to manage risk of loan portfolios that they're going to buy. But consumers oftentimes, as they're going in, or buyers, for a property, are making an offer on real estate, there oftentimes is an appraisal contingency. And if an appraisal is waived, then how does the buyer even know if they've got a potential value misalignment or something? If they've got an agent who's truly watching out for the best interest, then hopefully they're okay. But I've seen situations where an appraisal is waived, no appraisal is ordered, and then the buyer gets in and after the fact starts having questions about, well, crap, did I overpay for this property? There was no appraisal, done, whether ordered through them or through the lending process. And so there are multiple ways that the appraisal can be valuable in the process. But in terms of what FHFA is talking about with this announcement here, Bryan, it's a collateral risk decision that they're making. And I think there are some potential risks. We'll probably get into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah. So when we talk about risk assessment, I know years and years ago, it seemed like the mortgage industry was very concerned about the collateral, right? We were really a collateral-based lending society. And somewhere we shifted from a collateral-based lending society to a credit-based lending society. Then we had a housing crisis. And then immediately after that housing crisis, if you were a working appraiser back then, you probably noticed you had a big increase in traditional appraisal orders like FHA. I mean, our FHAs went through the roof after the housing crisis. I don't know. I mean, Mark, you said something about saving billions and billions of dollars of appraisal fees. Is it greed? Is that what this is all about, or time frame? Or, I know the bankers would certainly love to make loans without us. I mean, what is the genesis of this? Why, if there's any increase in risk at all, why do this? Why create an appraisal waiver program in the first place?
Boy, it is a great question, Bryan. I come at this from a lot of angles. I think that the missing data that we have, or that we don't have, and please, if you do have any information on this, please let me know, because I'm looking for it. But the waivers that have been used at volume over the last 7 or 8 years, what is the bad loan increase or decrease when those waivers are used one way or another? And I don't have that information. I think that's a really important piece, and likely a really heavy consideration from FHFA as they're making a decision to expand these sorts of things. So I think about that a lot. And it's interesting to me, Bryan. In the release from FHFA, I have a sentence quote from them, which is the policy builds on the long-running success of appraisal waivers by allowing more borrowers, particularly first-time and low to moderate borrowers, to benefit from cost savings and reduced turn times. And I'm just surprised by the measure of success being this cost savings to borrowers of a certain class, one way or another. I wish that they would be espousing the success of the lack of increased risk by the use of these waivers for whatever reason, one way or another. And that would be the measure of success. I'm not seeing that. It may be, but that's not what they're publicly stating.
But I just feel that you go from 80% to 97%. I mean, that is a big jump. And if it's all about a risk assessment, I mean, a 90% LTV, obviously, I mean, it's not difficult to understand. This is pretty common sense. That's going to be a lot riskier than an LTV at 80%. And do we, Mark, you mentioned turn times for either one of you. Do we have a shortage of appraisers right now? I mean, that was the big argument a few years ago before COVID. Well, we're waiting so long for appraisals. We can't get appraisals in the rural communities. We've got to do something. And that's why I've encouraged appraisers for a long, long time. Bring on a helper, bring on a couple of helpers, bring on a trainee. Have the ability to increase your capacity, because if you can't meet the needs of your client, they're going to find a workaround. There's no question about it. We need this many appraisals and we don't have enough appraisers to do it. But in today's environment, most appraisers I know right now would welcome some additional work or additional clients. I mean, we're all a little slow right now, Jeff. I mean, I don't know what your firm has been doing over the last few years, but we've been a little slow. So it's not really, it can't be a capacity issue right now.
I think you're exactly right, Bryan. And it's been painfully slow. I mean, I've been accused of being slow, like personally at an individual level, but it's slow, in terms of the transactions and those that make it down to the appraiser. And, as you zoom out a little bit, I think you made a good point, Bryan, that the market does ebb and flow. And I have been in conferences where representatives from Fannie or Freddie have pointed to excess appraisal demand that couldn't be met in the most peak experiences or times. But I think what happens is sometimes these policies get conceived, they get made, they get brought into place, and the timing is misaligned. If I zoom out even a little bit further, when we're talking about collateral risk, it's been a decade and a half or more since we've seen home values going down on a national scale. And I think part of what might be missing here is that the risk has been relatively low when the home values have been going up for 15 years or however long it's been since the last crash and the last bubble. And so the risk analysis might be skewed in that if there is a correction coming forward, this policy could turn out to bite them, because in the short term, if I've got good data, that for the last 6 or 12 months, that's one thing. But when values aren't continually increasing, and it's just hard to think that they're going to. We hear presidential candidates talking about housing affordability issues on both sides of the aisle. Anytime there's alignment on both sides of the aisle, there's probably something going on. But there's pain to be had, and whether home values come down or not, I wish I knew the future, and I don't. But I think this risk analysis extends beyond just what we've seen in the last year or two.
Yeah, you mentioned timing, Jeff. It just feels like the appraisers are being kicked when we're already down. I mean, the timing is just horrible. If we were all so busy we couldn't see straight, this would probably just be under the radar a little bit. But when every appraiser out there could use some more work, who's had a tough 2 or 3, 4 years since COVID, and then, okay, so you're not going to use this even more. It's very frustrating as a practitioner. Guys, hold that thought. We're going to come right back. I got to get through a little business here. I'd like to thank my sponsor, LIA Administrators and Insurance Services. Since 1978, that's 45 years, guys. LIA has been offering E&O insurance to valuation professionals just like you and me. They apply superior customer service, exceptional liability education, and unparalleled claim defense to serve well over 10,000 real estate professionals all across our lands. They offer commercial bonds, general liability, cyber liability, and so much, much more. Do yourself a favor, visit liability.com to learn more about how they can protect you and your business. All right, back to my guest here. Now, you guys, there's so much I could spend probably a couple of hours chatting with you guys. You got a lot of energy. You seem to be positive. Now, when I first started this, and I want to talk about your podcast in just a second, but when I first started, I said the sky's falling, right? Talk about your podcast for a minute. What are the types of guests you have? What are your topics? Are you guys talking about the skies falling in every episode? Or, what are we doom and gloom here? Or tell me a little bit about your podcast, guys.
Jeff, I'll take a stab at it. I think generally, Bryan, we are trying. I think our we don't have to try to do it. I think both Jeff and I's outlooks naturally are pretty optimistic. The sky is falling, otherwise defined as the size of the appraisal market share is shrinking for the last 2.5 decades since I've been in this, and we've been able to build pretty good careers out of it, and I know a lot of appraisers that have too. So I think there's reason to be optimistic. Bad news with this most recent FHFA, and really bad timing, as you alluded to. But the original concept of the podcast started with really coming out of our difficulty helping and seeing people trying to get into the appraisal profession. There were barriers to entry, and we saw we are trying to tackle that in our own private business, but we saw a public policy change known as PAREA, Practical Applications of Real Estate Appraisal, is possibly an additional pathway for people to become an appraiser. And there wasn't a lot of talk about it, and it was a little bit, well, not a lot. It was a change that was viewed as very negative, and sky is falling. And so we started with a 10-episode mini-series on PAREA talking about this just to get the conversation started. From there, we're about 8 episodes in, is just talking about current topics within the community. We've talked about artificial intelligence, housing, appraisal, and mortgage policy on the 2 presidential candidates and what might happen there, released just this week. And then things like FHFA release and other items there. So it's been a lot of fun for us. We both, Jeff and I, listen to regular podcasts in other industries that are just sort of weekly conversations, and we really have used that as an example for what we've put together.
Wait a minute. Wait just a minute. Did you tell me just now that you guys did a podcast about the presidential election coming up? Is that did I hear that right, Mark?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I love it. Hey, listen, I tip my hat to that. Now, that's one thing I try to, I'm no saint, ask my ex-wife. Okay. But when I'm on stage or I'm doing a podcast, I try not to say bad words. And then when you meet me in person, that's all I say. So I'm trying to do better, trying to clean up my act a little bit. But I also don't talk politics, and here we go. But I'm not going to get deep in this. But you guys actually had a podcast, a program where you were talking about the presidential debate, Jeff. How did that go? Was this? Tell me about it.
Yeah, you bet. I wanted to make Mark like Steelman the side that he may not have preferred, and have us argue back and forth and call each other names, but we didn't do that. What we really did try to do, Bryan, is like an appraiser mindset. Hopefully, is to just take an analytical look at what each side is saying about what their proposed policies are, what might we expect in terms of housing policies, interest rate policies. And their impact on appraisers. We had a great guest, Scott DiBiasio from the Appraisal Institute, came on, and frankly, he shared some pretty good perspectives on what they were talking about. One thing I learned that I didn't know is that both the Trump and the Harris side have a stated goal of trying to bring to market 3 million new affordable housing units in the first term of their proposed presidency. How they go about it's going to differ, but I didn't realize that was a kind of a common goal that each campaign was talking about. Lots of good stuff in there, I think, that had come up, but it was far from your typical political debate talk show, Bryan, where you're arguing that my person good, your person bad, and then vice versa, and you're talking about all the inconsistencies and things they've ever said in their whole life. That stuff doesn't interest me, but what might some of the practical implications be to the real estate housing market, depending on who's sitting in the White House in January, is of interest. Yeah. So I think we took it on in a way that wasn't your talk show approach.
All right. Well, we're not going to go much further with that. I might have one question with you, with both of you on that topic before you get off of here. But let me just share my screen right now, and for you guys that are watching, you can kind of see a little bit about what we're talking about. So the name of the podcast is Market Moves with Mark and Jeff. And there's their picture. Looks like they have a little character there. And oh, there it is, the Harris versus Trump. There's your podcast right there 2 days ago. So as I scroll down this, I see some familiar faces. It looks like you guys have some fun with this. There's Dana Thorne. She and I used to work together in another lifetime ago. Good grief. There's Melissa Bond. You've got some interesting folks on here. So how many, you've had 17 so far? Is that what I'm seeing?
Just recorded our 18th yesterday. That'll be published next week.
Okay, great. And you had you had a whole series on Perea. So how often does the podcast come out, guys?
We are efforting to do it once a week, Bryan. I don't know if you have found that cadence to be a little difficult to keep up with, but we are trying.
Good luck. Yeah, it's a lot of work, isn't it? I mean, it's people think, oh, you like to talk, sit down and talk, but man, I don't know if you're getting paid to do it. I don't get paid to do it. So it takes up time, and you got to think about what you're going to say. You got to line up your guest and maybe do a little editing here and there. We try not edit, but it's a job, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah. Listen, best of luck to both of you. I wish you all the success in the world with it. Let me just tell you what I have found personally, because many times I'll say, is anybody even listening to this? Am I wasting my time? Maybe I ought to quit. I could be making money right now. And every time someone comes up to me and says, hey, thank you, or hey, one person, now I've got a lot of haters out there too, I'm sure. But for every one person that comes up and says, good job, keep doing, I listen, it just makes you feel good. It makes it, oh, okay, it's worthwhile. So I'm sure you're already getting some of that feedback because you guys are doing a great job. Hey, I know I'm running out of time. I'm holding you hostage here, but before I let you go, let's talk about another topic that might kind of bring this full circle. I don't know if it will or not. If the sky's falling, if there's a push in the profession or the mortgage industry to get rid of us, to eliminate appraisers altogether, the appraisal waivers is a way to do it. So many people are saying. I don't know that that's true, but there's certainly a lot of doom and gloom being spread out there. And it is frustrating for me. I'd like all valuations to be performed by appraisers. As a practicing appraiser, I talked to a gentleman the other day that specializes in evals. He does a ton of evals, right? I just refinanced a couple of my properties. They did evals. I'm like, oh, that kills me as an appraiser, right? So Jeff Bradford said all valuations should be performed by appraisers, and I believe that. I think that'd be great. Let us just expand our practices to accommodate that. But on the traditional side of residential appraisers, they've done a lot of mortgage work, whether it be refinances or purchase transactions. So if the sky is really falling, if there is a push to get rid of us, why has Fannie and Freddie invested millions of dollars to revamp and retire that OURAR? And let's face it, guys, it needs to go away. We've been dealing with that form since 2005. It's a 20-year-old form. Let's look real quick at a new announcement that just came out as well on a separate topic. This is Fannie Freddie talking about the new data set. And I just want to put this out for appraisers because, guys, they're including me, there's been a lot of appraisers that's like, this is never going to happen. We've been hearing about this for 6 years. But this is their latest timeline. And guys, this is new because just a couple of months ago, I was in Dallas, Plano, at Fannie Mae's headquarters, and they said they did not have a drop date yet for when this was going to be required. And you can see on this timeline, they do now. So right here, September of 2025 to January 26. I mean, that's happening right now, limited production. And then it says broad production, January 26, 2026 through November 1st. So broad production, I would think that would be the majority of us. It's going to be required. So they're running two platforms. A lender theoretically could accept the new UAD protocol, or they could accept the original traditional type legacy, as I think they're calling it. But look here, mandated in November 2026, 1 year from now, November 2nd, 2026, it's a mandate. You're going to have to only submit the new. And then in May of 27, the old is out, done, not happening anymore. So it finally looks like this train is pulling into the station. You know, a lot of appraisers have been doubtful. And I was one of them there for a minute, because we've just been hearing this for years and years and years and years, and now we're finally seeing it coming. Questions: are appraisers prepared? If Fannie and Freddie was trying to get rid of us completely, why in the world would they be announcing this? And do you think this will be a good thing for the appraisal community?
Jeff, I'll take a stab, I guess, first here, if you don't mind. I think I have definitely felt like you, Bryan, that this new form is, doubtful that it will be here, and that the previous timelines laid out, it's been pushed out a little bit recently. Similar to a sky is falling mentality, I think generally, I think it was like Dale Carnegie or somebody that said 80% of the things we worry about don't actually happen. And I think these UAD forms are something to worry about when it's time to worry about them. I think this new timeline is giving us a little bit more of a confirming, I guess, calendar appointment sometime here soon. For me, it isn't today. I think these have tremendous impacts on appraisal processes and what it takes to get an appraisal done. They will have big impacts on my firm and how we do business. So I don't view it as time yet to dive in, but it's coming very quickly. And I think my advice to all, and the advice I am taking, is that when it is time to dive in, I'm going head first, all in. So, I think a little bit of a ways out. I think this is a really good juxtaposition, this initiative compared to the FHFA increase in appraisal waivers. Fannie and Freddie have said routinely, as we see them speak around the country multiple times a year, our plan involves appraisers. Look at the system that we use to analyze appraisals and make other decisions. The UCDP and the others they're relying on being fed with appraiser data. So it is built into the system. Are we going to be doing less appraisal work than before? Are we going to be doing less of the super easy, heavy data availability type of orders that we've been doing over the last several decades? I think the answer is yes to that. I think you had a third question, Bryan, but I at least got two of them.
I think my last question was, do you feel like appraisers are prepared for this?
Well, that I can take on and maybe kind of close the loop here a little bit too, Bryan, because I like Mark had said, I think a lot of people have known it's coming, but have been worried about not wanting to worry about it until the time was here, or it was really a necessity. And frankly, I don't think many appraisers have been able to get their hands on it and understand what is this new process going to be. The representatives from Fannie and Freddie have beat the drum that this is not just a new form. It's not just a different version of what we're used to in this fill out the 1004 form. It's going to be dynamic. It's going to be more interactive and adaptive. We're going to put commentary where it belongs within the report instead of referring back to an addendum or something like that. There's learning to be had. As Mark and I have been talking about this a little bit, I was reminded of this concept in the theory of evolution that Charles Darwin had brought forward. And it was an observation that it's not the smartest of a species that survives. It's not the strongest of the species that survives. It's the most adaptable. And I think as we're in markets, and we're not only opining on markets and market values as appraisers, but we're in a market for our services as well. And it's uncomfortable to adapt. And yet I think it's a necessity for survival and for thriving, now and going forward. Technology is disruptive. Artificial intelligence will probably yet be more disruptive than it has been. that there's a lot of things going on, and this new UAD version, the way that we communicate the results of our analysis is going to change. It's changing, but we have to be adaptable to it as we are. I do think that the future is bright for appraisers. It's just what we do and how we do it's going to look a little different than it did 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. And even though we may not want for that to be the case, acknowledging that it is, and then, embracing that, Mark talked about diving in head first when it's time. That kind of approach, I think, is what's going to lead to success for appraisers into the future.
So what I think I'm hearing from both of you is you don't really think the sky's falling for appraisers necessarily. You think things are changing. And to your point, Jeff, we all need to be able to adapt to those changes. Is that fair? I don't want to put words in your mouth. If you think the sky's falling, tell me now. Hurry so I can take cover. All right. Last question. Ready? So we're recording this right before the election. You guys, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because you guys were talking about, you had, and guys, go listen to their podcast about that one. So what are we? 1, 2, what are we? 3, we're 1, 2, 3, 4 days before the election. We're recording this. This won't show until after the election. And I'm not asking you who you support. I'm not going to tell you who I support. All I want to know is, who do you think's going to win? Jeff Morley?
Boy, I'm not really deep into that, Bryan. What I'm hearing in terms of momentum is, if I had to put money on something, I would say I'm thinking Trump is probably getting some momentum here, but that's not a very confident prognostication for whatever that's worth.
I'm trying to figure out your forecasting skills. Okay, so we as appraisers, we look at those crystal balls. We're not biased. We're not giving favoritism right now. We're trying to make an objective, impartial, unbiased opinion right now. Mark, same question for you.
Goodness, my only choice here, Bryan, is to outsource the opinion that. Someone that I follow in the public sphere, Chamath Palihapitiya, just a venture capitalist guy out there, but I find him pretty well educated, is describing what we're seeing in the marketplace. Bitcoin, strong dollar, inflation back up, mortgage interest rate, goodness gracious, jumping a full percentage point into the healthy 7s since Powell lowered rates. And then equities up, that this is generally the market positioning itself for an expected Trump win. That resonates with what I feel like the momentum is out there. I don't know, but the message hits home with what I feel like I'm seeing and connecting all the dots.
Yeah. It'd be interesting if we could take a market survey approach, wouldn't it? And see what we get. Guys, thanks for being here. Everybody check out their podcast. It's called Market Moves with Mark and Jeff. I assume they can find that anywhere where you listen to podcasts.
That's right.
And you guys are on YouTube as well. What if somebody wants to reach out to you guys directly? They either have a question or a comment. They want to engage you. Maybe they have an idea for a guest, or they want to be a guest on your program. Jeff, how would someone get in touch with Mr. Jeff Morley?
Yeah, you bet. Probably I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. A direct message there works great. Email address, jmorley@accurity.com. Probably the easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Perfect. Mark, what about you?
Follow me along on Twitter at @MarkVerrett_. LinkedIn is an easy way to reach me. Additionally, first initial, last name @accurity.com is a great way to reach me. And we, of course, read all the comments on our posts, positive and negative. Boy, the positive goes a long way to encourage us to keep doing the podcast work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, best of luck. Congratulations. I'm going to have to check out all of them now, and especially that last one. I want to hear all about that one. And again, we'll stay in touch. I'll have to have you on the program again very, very soon. Thank you for your time and joining us on the Appraisal Update podcast.
Thanks, Bryan. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Bryan.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Appraisal Update podcast, brought to you as always by the great folks over at Appraiser eLearning. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe. I would say go vote, but this is going to come out after the election, and I hope we know the answer by then. But until next time, for Mark and Jeff, I'm your host, Bryan Reynolds. Happy appraising.
The Appraisal Update podcast is brought to you by Appraiser eLearning.